Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to listen to me very carefully. There is a truth we rarely admit. Most people are not defeated by the world, but by themselves. They are not crushed by enemies outside, but by the softness inside. And this is why discipline is the greatest power a human being can hold. Not the discipline others force upon you, but the discipline you choose when no one is watching. Why should you listen closely to this? Because this is not about rules, punishments, or rigid living. This is about freedom, the kind of freedom only earned when you master yourself. Stay until the end, and you will understand why discipline is not a prison, but the key that unlocks every door you are afraid to open. Growth begins the moment you decide that comfort is no longer your God. Every distraction you entertain, every excuse you whisper to yourself robs you of the life you could live. Discipline does not ask if you are in the mood. Discipline does not wait for motivation. Discipline is the fire you light and tend, even on the days when the wind threatens to blow it out. The battle is always within. Laziness will seduce you. Doubt will whisper that you are not capable. Fear will insist you should stay where it is safe. But growth requires defiance, standing firm against the inner voices that would rather see you weak. Discipline is the shield you raise and the sword you carry in this silent war. It is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters, consistently. Discipline teaches you that repetition is not a burden, but a path. When you repeat small, meaningful actions, you carve out a new identity. Each disciplined act is a brick, and over time, you build the fortress of who you are meant to be. To sacrifice comfort is not punishment. It is preparation. Every time you deny yourself the fleeting pleasure of distraction, you strengthen the muscle of will. Growth comes not from indulgence, but from stepping willingly into challenge, into the very things that scare you, because that is where strength is forged. A disciplined mind brings order to chaos. Without it, you are tossed by every wave of impulse, every passing emotion. With it, you cut through the noise, seeing clearly what must be done. Discipline transforms the scattered into the focused, the weak into the unshakable. And here lies the deeper truth. Discipline is an act of love. To deny yourself momentary ease is to gift yourself a future of freedom, strength, and peace. When you choose discipline, you are not restricting yourself, you are saving yourself. Time will reveal it all. 10 years from now, the person you become will be nothing more than the sum of your disciplined choices or your lack of them. Every day, every moment is a seed. Discipline waters it. Neglect kills it. Discipline is not about chains. It is about wings. It does not confine you. It transforms you. It makes you grow into the version of yourself you once thought impossible. The choice is simple. Indulge the weakness and remain the same, or discipline yourself and become unrecognizable. Discipline is freedom. At first, this may sound like a contradiction. How can structure, rules, and restraint lead to freedom? Isn't freedom about doing whatever you want, whenever you want? This is where most people are mistaken. What looks like freedom, the ability to indulge every impulse, to give in to every desire, is in fact another kind of prison. It is the prison of weakness, of being chained to urges and habits you cannot control. Real freedom is not the absence of limits, but the presence of mastery. Discipline is not about denying yourself life. It is about granting yourself the power to live it fully. Imagine two people. One wakes up every day, guided by their impulses. They sleep when they feel like it. They eat whatever they crave. They scroll endlessly because their mind seeks distraction. On the surface, this person seems free, unbound by discipline. But if you look closely, you see someone enslaved to mood, enslaved to temptation, enslaved to weakness. Now imagine another person. They rise early not because they enjoy it every time, but because they chose a higher purpose. They train their body not because comfort calls them, but because strength does. They focus on work, not because distraction is absent, but because they refuse to bow to it. Who then is truly free? The one who obeys every desire, or the one who commands them? Discipline creates a different kind of life. It removes the chaos that comes from drifting. When you lack discipline, life is like a storm. You are tossed wherever the wind blows. Your energy scatters into 1,000 directions. And at the end of the day, you wonder why nothing has changed, why progress feels so far. But discipline is the anchor. It grounds you. It focuses your strength into deliberate action. Instead of living like a prisoner of mood, you live as a master of choice. And in this mastery, you discover a freedom no indulgence could ever give. There is also a hidden beauty in discipline. At first, it feels hard, like chains you place upon yourself. You wake up earlier than your body wants. You resist pleasures that seem harmless in the moment. You push yourself into tasks when every part of you seeks rest. Slowly, something shifts. The very habits that felt heavy become natural. The choices that seemed impossible become effortless. Discipline ceases to be a struggle and turns into rhythm. And with rhythm comes peace. You no longer argue with yourself about what must be done. You simply do it. This is freedom. The freedom from hesitation, the freedom from regret, the freedom from being at war with your own will. Think of a musician. To play freely, to improvise beautifully, to create music that flows effortlessly, they first submit to years of disciplined practice. Hours of scales, endless repetition, the steady grind of refinement. But what is the result? The discipline of practice gives them the freedom to create without limits. In the same way, when you discipline your life, you prepare yourself for a freedom that is effortless, natural, and deeply fulfilling. The world tempts you to believe that freedom is an indulgence. It tells you to eat whatever you like, to waste time without care, to avoid hardship at all costs. But what the world does not tell you is the price you pay. Overindulgence destroys health, distractions steal time, avoidance kills dreams. Every moment you live without discipline is a moment you surrender your power. It is a slow erosion. Unnoticed at first, but devastating in the end. To live without discipline is to live at the mercy of decline. To live with discipline is to rise, to strengthen, to grow beyond what you thought possible. And here lies the paradox. Discipline feels like control, but in truth, it is liberation. When you choose discipline, you choose to no longer be a slave. You are not pulled endlessly by appetite, not bound by habit, not trapped by weakness. You can say no, you can resist, you can direct your energy where it matters most. Discipline hands you the keys to your own life. Without it, life controls you. With it, you control life. Every act of discipline is an act of freedom. Waking up early gives you more hours to shape your destiny. Training your body gives you freedom from sickness and fatigue. Guarding your focus gives you freedom from mediocrity. Saving money gives you freedom from debt. Studying with intent gives you freedom to choose your path. Every sacrifice of comfort is not a loss. It is an investment in a greater life. When you think of discipline, do not see it as a cage. See it as the path to becoming unshakable. Discipline is not the end of joy. It is the beginning of real joy, the joy of mastery, the joy of strength, the joy of knowing you are not ruled by weakness. It is the foundation upon which growth is built, the silent power that turns dreams into reality. Discipline is freedom, because without it, you are forever bound. The greatest war you will ever fight is not against the world, but against yourself. It is not fought with armies, weapons, or strategies, but in the quiet moments when no one is watching. It is the war between the part of you that seeks growth and the part of you that seeks comfort. Between the voice that tells you to rise and the voice that tells you to stay in bed. Between the desire to move forward and the temptation to remain the same. This is the silent war within, and every human being is a soldier in it, whether they acknowledge it or not. Most people think their struggles come from the outside. They blame their circumstances, the lack of opportunities, the unfairness of life. Yet if you look deeply, You realize that the greatest obstacle has always been within. It is not the world that holds you back. It is your own hesitation, your own distractions, your own lack of discipline. Laziness whispers sweetly, telling you there is always tomorrow. Fear chains you, convincing you that failure will destroy you. Doubt clouds your vision, insisting that you are not capable, that greatness belongs to others. These voices do not shout. They whisper softly, comfortably, making their lies sound reasonable. And that is why they are so dangerous. This inner battle is subtle. It does not announce itself with drums or banners. It creeps in when you hesitate before beginning, when you choose entertainment over effort, when you allow one excuse to slip by unnoticed. And slowly, the small defeats pile up until you realize you are trapped in a life smaller than the one you were meant for. That is how the silent war claims most people. Not with a single dramatic failure, but with countless small surrenders. There is also a different path. You can learn to hear those inner whispers for what they are, the resistance that appears whenever growth is near. The voice of laziness grows loudest when discipline is most needed. Fear rises highest when you stand at the edge of transformation. Doubt strikes hardest when you are on the verge of proving it wrong. When you recognize this pattern, you understand that the enemy within is not proof of your weakness, but a signpost that you are moving in the right direction. To win this war, you must treat your mind like a battlefield. You cannot simply hope that strength will appear. You must train it. Each time you resist an impulse, you sharpen your weapon. Each time you choose action over excuses, you strengthen your armor. Each time you silence doubt with effort, you claim new territory within yourself. Slowly, you turn the tide. The enemy does not disappear, but it weakens. The whispers lose their power. And one day you realize that you are no longer at the mercy of your moods. You are commanding them. Growth is never comfortable. The part of you that resists is the part that fears transformation. To grow is to leave behind the person you were, and the mind clings to what is familiar, even when it holds you back. This is why the battle within feels so relentless, because it is not just about discipline, it is about identity. Each act of discipline reshapes who you are. Each small victory proves to your own mind that you are stronger than you once believed. But there will always be resistance. Do not wait for it to vanish before you act, because it never will. Even the strongest feel the pull of comfort, the weight of fear, the sting of doubt. The difference is simple. The weak listen, the strong move anyway. Discipline is not the absence of resistance. It is the refusal to bow to it. The war within is not about destroying those inner voices, but about choosing not to obey them. And here lies the deeper truth. This war is not something to fear, but something to embrace. For every battle you win inside yourself, the outside world becomes easier. When you master laziness, no obstacle feels too heavy. When you conquer fear, no risk feels too great. When you silence doubt, no dream feels too distant. The outer victories of life, success, strength, growth, are only reflections of the inner victories you have already won. The world is not your enemy. The real enemy is the weakness you nurture, the excuses you allow, the hesitation you protect. But within that same self lies your greatest ally, the disciplined, unshakable version of you that is waiting to rise. Every day you fight, you get closer to meeting that version. And when you do, you will see that the silent war was never meant to break you. It was meant to build you. Desire is easy. Direction is hard. Desire flares up in a moment, ignited by emotion or impulse. It is the spark that makes you say, I want to change, I want to succeed, I want to grow. But sparks without fuel fade quickly. Desire by itself is unreliable. It burns brightly for a short while and then vanishes, leaving you where you started. Direction, on the other hand, is steady. It is not just wanting something. It is knowing the path, setting your compass, and committing to walk it, step by step, even when desire cools and motivation disappears. Growth is not achieved by desire alone. It is achieved when you transform desire into direction. Think about how often people make promises to themselves in moments of desire. They vow to wake up earlier, to start exercising, to focus on their studies or their craft, to finally break free from bad habits. In the fire of desire, these promises feel powerful. But when the morning comes, when the body resists, when the distractions appear, the fire burns out. Desire whispers, not today, maybe tomorrow. And because there is no direction, no system, no discipline, those promises crumble into nothing. This is why so many live their lives trapped between longing and regret. They desire greatly, but lack the direction to carry it through. Direction is where growth begins to take root. When you give your desire a shape, when you break it down into clear steps, when you tie it to discipline, then it stops being just a passing feeling. It becomes a path. Without direction, desire makes you a dreamer. With direction, desire makes you a dreamer. With direction, desire makes you a creator. The difference is profound. Dreamers hope, but creators build. Dreamers wish, but creators act. Understand that direction is not about grand plans alone. It is about structure. If you want to master a skill, it is not enough to desire greatness. You must carve out the hours, decide when and how you will practice, and keep walking that path. If you want to strengthen your body, it is not enough to desire health. You must set a schedule, resist temptation, and move consistently regardless of mood. If you want freedom, success, peace, whatever your desire is, you must give it a map. Without that map, you wander in circles, led by emotion, never reaching where you want to go. The danger of desire without direction is that it breeds frustration. The more you want something without making progress toward it, the heavier your longing becomes. You start believing that life is unfair, that others are lucky, that maybe you are simply not meant for it. But the truth is not that you are incapable. It is that you have not aligned your desire with direction. You are asking the fire to burn without giving it wood. Direction demands sacrifice. To choose a path is to say no to 1,000 other distractions. It means narrowing your focus, disciplining your time, shaping your actions around what matters most. Many resist this because they think it limits their freedom. But in reality, it is what makes freedom possible. When you have direction, you are no longer pulled endlessly by every impulse. You know where you are going, and every step brings you closer. Without direction, you waste energy chasing many things and grasp nothing fully. There is also a deeper truth. Direction transforms desire into identity. When you choose a path and stay on it, your actions begin to define who you are. A person who only desires strength says, "I wish I were disciplined." But a person with direction acts in discipline, and soon they no longer wish for it. They embody it. A person who only desires knowledge says, "I wish I were wise." But a person with direction studies, learns, and practices until wisdom becomes part of them. Direction is the bridge between wishing and becoming. Do not despise desire. It is the beginning, the spark that lights the fire. But never confuse it with the fire itself. Desire without direction is fleeting. Direction without desire is empty. Together, they create transformation. Desire gives you the why. Direction gives you the how. Desire makes you dream. Direction makes you grow. Ask yourself, are you guided by desire alone? Or do you have direction? Do your wants stay in your mind? Or do they move through your hands into action? Growth belongs not to those who wish, but to those who turn wishes into will and will into ways. The day you stop relying on desire and begin cultivating direction, you stop waiting for life to change and start becoming the change itself. Motivation is like the weather, unpredictable, fleeting, and never fully under your control. One day you wake up inspired, filled with energy and vision, ready to take on the world. The next day you rise heavy, drained, uninterested, and the fire you felt yesterday is nowhere to be found. If you depend on motivation, you become a prisoner to its moods. Your progress rises and falls with your emotions. That is why true growth can never rely on motivation alone. Growth is built on consistency, on showing up daily, on acting with discipline, regardless of how you feel. Consistency is what separates those who wish from those who achieve. It is easy to work when you are inspired, but it is consistency that keeps you moving when inspiration fades. Think of the person who only trains when they feel motivated. They will remain the same year after year because they are driven by mood, not by principle. Now think of the one who trains every day, even when tired, even when uninspired. Now think of the one who trains every day, even when tired, even when uninspired. Over time, their discipline shapes them into something unrecognizable. The difference between mediocrity and mastery is not found in bursts of motivation, but in the quiet repetition of consistent effort. Motivation is a spark, but consistency is the firewood. Without fuel, sparks die out. Motivation may begin the journey, but only consistency carries you to the destination. Every great artist, thinker, athlete, or creator will tell you the same truth. Their achievements were not the result of constant inspiration, but of relentless consistency. They showed up day after day, sometimes with passion, sometimes without it, but always with commitment. And over time, consistency became the very reason they reached heights others only dreamed of. The mind resists routine, the body resists repetition. You tell yourself, I don't feel like it today. But consistency does not ask for your feelings, it asks for your choice. And as you choose again and again, something changes within you. What once felt like a burden becomes habit. What once demanded discipline becomes automatic. Consistency frees you from the endless debate of whether to act or not. You simply act. And in that simplicity lies immense power. The danger of waiting for motivation is that it breeds delay. You convince yourself that you need to feel ready, that you need to feel inspired, that the right mood must arrive before you begin. But days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and the opportunity slips away while you wait for a feeling that never stays long enough. Consistency destroys this illusion. It says, I will not wait for perfect conditions. I will create them by acting. Consistency is also the measure of seriousness. Anyone can dream. Anyone can say they want change. But only consistency proves the depth of desire. To show up once is easy. To show up every day, even when life is heavy, even when progress feels slow, that is what forges strength. It is through consistency that discipline takes root, and through discipline the transformation becomes inevitable. It is worth remembering that consistency does not mean perfection. You will stumble, you will miss days, you will face setbacks. But consistency is not broken by imperfection. It is built on persistence. What matters is not never falling, it is always returning. When you commit to consistency, you teach yourself that failure is not the end but a pause. And each time you return, you come back stronger, more resilient, more prepared. Think of water dripping onto stone. One drop seems insignificant, powerless. But drip by drip, day by day, the stone is worn down, reshaped by persistence. That is the power of consistency. Each action by itself may feel small, but together, over time, they create transformations that seem impossible in the moment. The person who shows up daily, even in small ways, will outgrow the one who waits for rare bursts of energy. Consistency is freedom from the chaos of emotion. It is freedom from the cycle of starting and stopping, from the highs of inspiration and the lows of neglect. It gives you stability, rhythm, progress you can trust. It allows you to look back not on scattered efforts, but on a steady line of growth that carried you forward. If you want to grow, do not chase motivation. Respect it when it comes, use it as fuel, but never depend on it. Anchor yourself in consistency. Build your days not around how you feel, but around what must be done. And over time, you will discover something powerful, that by showing up, by being consistent, you no longer need to wait for motivation, because discipline has taken its place. And discipline will carry you farther than inspiration ever could. Growth has a price, and that price is comfort. The human mind loves ease, it loves the familiar, it loves the soft pillow of routine. But comfort, while pleasant, is also the most dangerous trap. It keeps you warm, but it keeps you weak. It lulls you into believing that life should always feel good, that difficulty is a sign of failure rather than a doorway to strength. Yet nothing great has ever been born from comfort. Every breakthrough, every transformation, every victory comes from sacrifice, the deliberate choice to step away from what is easy in order to become what is strong. When you look at those who rise, those who achieve, those who grow into versions of themselves that inspire others, you will see a common pattern. They walked away from comfort. They denied themselves indulgences others gladly embraced. They pushed their bodies when their bodies begged for rest. They disciplined their minds when distraction called out to them. They gave up the temporary in exchange for the permanent. And though the sacrifices may have looked painful in the moment, what they received in return was priceless: strength, clarity, and growth. Sacrificing comfort does not mean rejecting all joy. It means understanding the difference between pleasures that weaken you and struggles that strengthen you. There is pleasure in distraction, but it leaves you empty. There is comfort in avoidance, but it leaves you powerless. There is ease in delay, but it leaves you stagnant. To sacrifice these false comforts is not punishment. It is preparation. It is the recognition that growth requires discomfort, and discomfort is not your enemy, but your ally. The body grows stronger only through resistance. Muscles are torn so they can rebuild thicker, denser, more powerful. The mind grows sharper only through challenge. Thoughts are stretched, assumptions questioned, beliefs reshaped. The spirit grows deeper only through trials. Pain humbles it, loss awakens it, difficulty strengthens it. If you run from discomfort, you run from growth itself. But when you embrace it, when you willingly sacrifice comfort for the sake of strength, you discover a resilience you never imagined you possessed. Comfort, for many, becomes an identity. People say, "This is who I am, I can't change, I don't want to struggle." But this is not identity. It is fear disguised as acceptance. The truth is, you are not bound to your weakness. You are bound to the habits you protect. Every sacrifice you make breaks one of those chains. Every time you choose discipline over ease, you shatter a piece of the prison you built for yourself.
Sacrifice is not about loss. It is about liberation. Ask yourself, what are the comforts that keep you weak? Is it the endless hours of distraction, the scrolling, the entertainment that numbs rather than uplifts? Is it the comfort of excuses, the stories you tell yourself to avoid responsibility? Is it the comfort of staying small, avoiding risks, refusing to face your fears? These are the comforts that feel safe but silently poison growth.
To sacrifice them is to reclaim your strength. And here lies the paradox. When you sacrifice comfort, you gain a greater comfort. Not the shallow comfort of ease, but the deep comfort of knowing you can rely on yourself. The comfort of confidence, the comfort of resilience, the comfort of standing unshaken in the storms of life. This kind of comfort is not given, it is earned. It is built through discipline, through courage, through sacrifice. Think of the person who wakes early while the world still sleeps. At first, the bed feels like an enemy, the warmth like a temptation too strong to resist. But they rise anyway. In that small act, they sacrifice comfort. Over time, that sacrifice shapes their life. They become sharper, stronger, more capable. The world sees their results and calls them lucky, but luck had nothing to do with it. It was sacrifice, small, daily, consistent, that carved them into who they are. To sacrifice comfort is to plant seeds in the soil of struggle. At first, it looks barren. You see only effort, only pain, only denial. But with time, those seeds grow into discipline, into strength, into greatness. And when you harvest the fruits of your sacrifice, you realize that nothing was truly lost. What you gave up was never real power. What you gained is beyond measure. So do not cling to comfort. Do not worship it. Recognize it for what it is, a soft chain disguised as safety. Let it go and step into the discomfort that builds you. For on the other side of sacrifice lies the version of yourself you have always wanted to become. Growth demands this price, but it is a price worth paying. Comfort will give you moments of ease. Sacrifice will give you a lifetime of strength. When you hold on too tightly to outcomes, people, or situations, you unknowingly create resistance in your own life. This resistance makes every step forward feel heavy, as though you are walking against a current. Life was never meant to be controlled so rigidly. The more you attempt to grasp, the more you feel things slipping away. Letting go is not about abandoning responsibility or giving up on your desires, but about understanding that attachment to how things must unfold creates unnecessary suffering. When you release this tight grip, you allow life to flow more naturally, and often you will discover that what comes to you freely is more aligned than what you were desperately chasing. Think of a clenched fist. It can hold onto something tightly, but it cannot receive anything new. In the same way, when your heart and mind are closed by attachment, new opportunities cannot enter. Letting go opens your hands, your heart, and your spirit. It is the act of saying, I trust that life has a rhythm far wiser than my control. This doesn't mean you stop putting in effort. It means you focus your effort on the things within your influence while surrendering the rest. For instance, you can prepare, study, work hard, and show up fully in your endeavors, but you cannot dictate the timing of results or force people to act the way you want them to. When you realize this, a great weight is lifted from your shoulders. Much of human frustration comes from expecting certainty in an uncertain world. People try to predict outcomes, hold others to promises, or force life into a neat shape. And when reality doesn't cooperate, they feel betrayed. But life has never promised certainty. It only offers possibilities. When you make peace with uncertainty, you stop fighting with the unknown and instead embrace it as a space of potential. This is where letting go becomes a form of wisdom. It teaches you to trust that the unknown may bring gifts you cannot yet imagine. Many times, what you thought was a loss was simply life clearing space for something greater. Letting go also frees you from the emotional chains of resentment and regret. When you hold on to anger towards someone, you give them space in your mind and energy in your spirit. It's like carrying around a heavy stone that weighs down your steps. Forgiveness is not about saying what they did was acceptable. It is about releasing yourself from being tied to that pain. In the same way, when you cling to regrets of the past, you waste the only moment you truly have, the present. The past cannot be rewritten, no matter how tightly you hold it in your memory. The act of letting go is the act of choosing freedom over bondage. You can see this principle in nature. Trees shed their leaves every autumn without resistance. They do not mourn the loss, for they know that in time, new leaves will sprout. Rivers never cling to the rocks they pass, but keep flowing toward the ocean. Clouds drift, dissolve, and reform. Everything in nature embraces the rhythm of release, and it thrives because of it. As human beings, we suffer when we fight against this rhythm, insisting that things should stay as they are or become exactly as we imagine. But when we align with this natural flow, we find peace. Letting go also requires trust in yourself. Many people fear that if they release control, their life will fall apart. But often the opposite happens. When you stop micromanaging every detail and allow space for spontaneity, life has room to surprise you. You begin to discover strength and adaptability within yourself that you never noticed while you were busy clinging. The ability to let go doesn't make you weaker. It reveals your inner resilience. It shows that you have faith in your capacity to face whatever comes. It is important to understand that Letting go doesn't mean indifference. Indifference is apathy, but letting go is active faith. It is saying, I will care deeply, but I will not chain myself to outcomes I cannot control. In relationships, this looks like loving fully, but not trying to control the other person. In goals, it means working diligently, but accepting delays or detours with patience. In self-growth, it means releasing the idea of perfection and embracing progress. Every time you let go, you create space for transformation. The old must make room for the new. And sometimes what you lose is simply what no longer serves your journey. The challenge is trusting this process when the present feels uncertain. But if you reflect on your life, you will likely notice that many of the moments where you were forced to let go, whether of a person, a job, or a dream, led you to places you never expected but deeply needed. Letting go, at its core, is freedom. It liberates your mind from obsessive control, your heart from unnecessary suffering, and your spirit from fear. It is not something you practice once, but a continuous choice you make in daily life. Every day offers opportunities to release expectations, release comparisons, release grudges, release the need to control. And with each release, you step closer to peace. True strength is often misunderstood. Many people believe it lies in control, dominance, or the ability to bend others to their will. But real strength is far quieter and subtler. It is the ability to remain steady when everything around you is shifting. It is the capacity to respond to life with clarity instead of reacting out of fear or anger. When you realize this, you understand that true power is not about conquering others. It is about mastering yourself. To be calm in chaos, to stay grounded in storms, to walk away without resentment when others try to provoke you, that is the essence of strength. The world often rewards noise. Those who shout the loudest, who display aggression, or who constantly demand attention seem powerful on the surface. But this kind of strength is fragile because it depends on external validation. If others stop listening or circumstances shift, that power collapses. True strength cannot be taken away because it comes from within. It is not built on dominance, but on self-awareness and resilience. A person who knows who they are does not need to prove it to anyone. Their silence becomes louder than another's shouting, and their presence carries weight without forcing it. Think of a mountain. It does not need to move or shout to prove its strength. Its stillness is its power. The storms may batter it, seasons may change, but it remains. In the same way, someone rooted in true strength does not crumble when others disagree, betray, or misunderstand them. They are not swayed by every opinion or consumed by every challenge. Their power lies in their inner stability, a quiet assurance that they can endure and adapt. True strength also involves letting go of the need to control others. It is tempting to think power means making people obey or bending circumstances to your will. But this kind of force is exhausting and temporary. The strongest people understand that their energy is better spent mastering themselves than controlling the world. When you stop trying to control others, you reclaim your peace. You realize that you cannot dictate their choices, but you can choose your own response. That is where freedom lies. Another aspect of real strength is vulnerability. Many mistake vulnerability for weakness, but in reality, it takes great courage to be honest about your fears, wounds, and limitations. Pretending to be unshakable is easy. Showing your true self without fear of judgment is far harder. Strength is not about having no wounds. It is about carrying them with dignity and continuing to move forward. It is the refusal to let pain make you bitter or setbacks define your worth. Vulnerability allows connection, and connection is a source of resilience. True strength is also patience. In a world that glorifies instant results, the ability to wait with faith is a sign of immense power. It is easy to become restless, to chase outcomes, or to force timing. But strength is choosing to trust the process, even when results are unseen. It is understanding that everything has its season. A seed does not sprout overnight. and forcing it to grow faster will only harm it. Similarly, when you trust the rhythm of your life, you stop wasting energy on rushing and instead invest it in steady growth. Silence is another form of strength. Not every insult requires a reply. Not every challenge needs a fight. And not every opinion deserves your attention. The ability to hold your peace, to walk away instead of reacting, and to let your actions speak louder than your words is a sign of true mastery. Silence protects your energy, confuses those who expect you to crumble, and shows that your worth does not depend on proving yourself. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to remain still when provoked, because you know your focus is too precious to waste on pettiness. Strength is also compassion. It takes far more courage to forgive than to seek revenge, to show kindness when it is undeserved, and to remain gentle in a world that often rewards hardness. This does not mean allowing others to misuse you, but it does mean refusing to let their negativity turn you into someone you are not. Compassion requires discipline, for it asks you to act with wisdom rather than impulse. The strongest people are often the kindest because they have nothing to prove and no need to assert dominance. They know their power is unshakable. Life will constantly test your strength. You will face loss, betrayal, disappointment, and uncertainty. In those moments, it may feel easier to give in to anger, despair, or bitterness. But each test is an opportunity to deepen your strength. Every challenge you survive proves that you are capable of more than you thought. With each struggle, you grow more resilient, and with each letting go, you grow lighter. The more you stop clinging to what drags you down, the more space you create for inner peace. True strength is freedom. It is the ability to walk through life without being enslaved by fear, ego, or the need for control. It is living with clarity, acting with wisdom, and remaining steady no matter what storms arrive. It is not loud, but it is undeniable. Those who embody it do not need recognition, because their strength is evident in their presence. They shine without trying, and their energy inspires others to discover the same resilience within themselves. Discipline is not about chains, restrictions, or rigid control. It is about freedom. This may sound paradoxical at first, but consider it deeply. When you live without discipline, you are not truly free. You are enslaved by impulses, cravings, distractions, and moods. You eat when the craving strikes, you waste time when the temptation appears, you quit when the effort feels uncomfortable. On the surface, this feels like freedom, but in reality, it is bondage, because your choices are dictated by fleeting desires rather than deliberate will. Discipline breaks that cycle. It gives you mastery over yourself so that your actions align with your deeper goals instead of being hijacked by temporary urges. That is where real freedom begins. Think about the person who lacks discipline. They wake up whenever they feel like it, scroll endlessly through distractions, and avoid the work they know they must do. In the moment, this feels easier, even pleasurable. But over time, this freedom creates chains of regret, chains of missed opportunities, chains of wasted potential. The undisciplined person lives at the mercy of their emotions, and emotions change constantly. They are tossed around like a leaf in the wind, never truly choosing, always reacting. This is not freedom, it is chaos disguised as comfort. Now consider the disciplined person. They rise at the time they promised themselves, even when it is uncomfortable. They stay focused on their work when distractions call, and they follow through on their commitments even when the excitement has faded. To outsiders, this may appear restrictive, even harsh. But look closer. This person is building strength. They are shaping their days instead of being shaped by them. Over time, their discipline becomes a source of liberation because they can trust themselves. They are no longer prisoners of impulse. They are guided by choice. That is freedom in its purest form, the freedom to live life intentionally. Discipline gives you control over the present and influence over the future. When you discipline your mind and body, you step out of the endless loop of reaction and enter the realm of creation. You no longer live merely by default, you begin to live by design. The undisciplined say, I'll do it when I feel like it. The disciplined say, I'll do it when I feel like it. The disciplined say, I'll do it because I choose it. One is bound by feeling. The other is free through choice. Discipline feels hard at the beginning, but leads to hardship. To wake early, to resist temptation, to stay consistent. Yes, these things require effort. But that effort compounds into strength, growth, and fulfillment. Meanwhile, giving in to every craving, postponing effort, and avoiding discomfort may feel pleasant now, but it creates suffering later. Discipline is the path of temporary pain that leads to lasting peace. The lack of it is the path of temporary comfort that leads to lasting pain. Freedom through discipline also extends to the mind. Without discipline also extends to the mind. Without discipline, the mind becomes a wild beast, constantly wandering from one thought to another, consumed by worry, overthinking, and fear. Such a mind robs you of peace. But when you discipline your thoughts, through focus, mindfulness, or self-awareness, you gain inner freedom. You are no longer dragged helplessly by every worry. You can direct your attention where it serves you. A disciplined mind is calm, sharp, and free. Consider the artist, the athlete, the musician, or the philosopher. None of their greatness came from desire alone. It was discipline that transformed their vision into reality. Hours of practice, repetition, sacrifice, all of it appeared as limits. But those limits gave birth to mastery. Without discipline, their talent would have remained a shadow of what it could be. Discipline is the bridge between potential and achievement. It frees you from mediocrity and gives you access to the highest expression of yourself. There is also a spiritual freedom that comes from discipline. When you learn to govern your desires, your anger, your ego, you are no longer enslaved by them. Many people spend their lives trying to control the external world, but they remain captives of their inner world. True liberation is not about bending life to your will, but about disciplining yourself so that no matter what life brings, you remain steady. This steadiness is the deepest freedom, to meet joy without clinging, pain without collapsing, and uncertainty without fear. Freedom through discipline does not mean living joylessly or harshly. It means living with balance. It is not about denying yourself pleasure, but about not being consumed by it. It is not about rejecting comfort, but about not depending on it. It is not about controlling everything, but about being free to choose wisely in every moment. Discipline allows you to enjoy pleasures without addiction, face challenges without despair, and pursue dreams without hesitation. When you hear the word discipline, do not think of chains. Think of keys. Each discipline choice is a key that unlocks a new level of freedom. The freedom to live with purpose, the freedom to act with clarity, the freedom to rise above impulses that once controlled you. In disciplining yourself, you are not limiting your life, you are expanding it. You are choosing the narrow path today so that tomorrow your life may open wide with possibility. Growth is not a single moment of breakthrough, it is a lifelong journey. Many people believe that once they achieve a certain milestone, success, recognition, or peace, they will finally arrive. But the truth is, there is no final arrival. The moment you stop growing, you begin to wither. Life itself is movement, constant change, and evolution. To discipline yourself to grow means accepting that the journey never ends, that every stage of life requires new lessons, new challenges, and new forms of strength. This is not a burden, but a gift, because growth is what keeps life alive, vibrant, and meaningful. The illusion of arrival often deceives people. A student thinks, once I graduate, I'll be free. An employee thinks, once I get that promotion, I'll be fulfilled. A dreamer thinks, once I reach success, I'll finally be happy. Yet when these goals are reached, the satisfaction fades and a new desire emerges. This is because growth is not about reaching one destination. It is about becoming someone new at every step. The disciplined person understands this. They do not chase growth as if it were a finish line. They live it daily, seeing each step as part of an unending unfolding. Discipline makes this journey possible because it turns growth into a way of life instead of a temporary pursuit. Without discipline, you only grow when circumstances push you, when failure forces you, or when pain leaves you no choice. But with discipline, you grow deliberately, choosing challenges, seeking wisdom, and refining yourself even when life is comfortable. This is the mark of maturity, to grow not only when you must, but because you choose to. There will always be seasons of struggle and seasons of ease. Discipline allows you to use both for growth. In struggle, it teaches you resilience, patience, and strength. In ease, it teaches you gratitude, consistency, and humility. Without discipline, struggle crushes you and ease weakens you. With discipline, both refine you. Growth, then, is not dependent on what life gives you, but on how you meet life, and that choice is shaped by discipline. The lifelong journey of growth also requires humility. To keep growing, you must accept that you are never finished, never perfect, never beyond learning. The arrogant person believes they have arrived, and in that belief, they stagnate. The disciplined person, however, remains a student forever. They welcome correction, seek wisdom, and remain open to being reshaped. This humility is strength, because it frees you from the trap of ego and keeps you moving forward when others stop. Another aspect of lifelong growth is the ability to reinvent yourself. Life will demand change. Careers shift, relationships evolve, circumstances collapse, identities transform. Gives you the courage to shed old skins and step into new versions of yourself again and again. Without discipline, change feels like destruction. With discipline, change becomes rebirth. To see growth as a lifelong path also means embracing discomfort. Growth never happens in the comfort zone, and discipline trains you to step willingly into challenge. Every time you resist the pull of laziness, every time you push through fear, every time you rise after falling, you expand the edges of who you are. Comfort makes you stagnant. Discomfort shapes you. The disciplined person understands that the very moments they want to quit are the moments they are closest to real transformation. Lifelong growth is also about contribution. As you grow, you realize that your journey is not only about yourself. Discipline enables you to turn your strength into service, your wisdom into guidance, your resilience into inspiration. The disciplined life radiates outward, lifting others, shaping environments, and leaving a legacy. Growth becomes not only personal, but communal, not only about becoming more, but about giving more. There is a quiet peace in living this way. When you accept growth as endless, you stop rushing. You stop looking for shortcuts or final answers. Instead, you find joy in the process. You learn to celebrate progress rather than perfection, direction rather than arrival. Discipline makes this peace possible because it teaches you consistency. Instead of being consumed by the urgency of results, you commit to the process, knowing that growth will come naturally if you keep walking the path. Growth as a lifelong journey is about freedom, depth, and becoming. You will never reach a point where you are finished. And that is the beauty of it. Every day is a chance to learn, to refine, to expand. Discipline ensures that you do not waste these chances. It anchors you in the truth that life is not about waiting for change, but about becoming the change again and again. The disciplined person does not fear the endlessness of growth, they embrace it, because they know that in every step, life reveals more of what it means to be fully alive. Growth is not something that happens to you by chance. It is something you shape through deliberate choice, through the discipline of your mind, your body, and your spirit. Desire may ignite the spark, but discipline keeps the fire alive. It is the quiet force that transforms dreams into reality weakness into strength, and confusion into clarity. Discipline teaches you that true freedom is not found in giving in to every impulse, but in mastering yourself so that your actions align with your higher purpose. The journey of growth is not a destination, it is a lifelong unfolding. Every challenge you endure, every temptation you resist, every step you take with intention becomes part of your becoming. Discipline is not a cage. It is the key that unlocks your deepest potential. And when you embrace it fully, you discover that growth is not a burden to carry, but the greatest gift life offers, the chance to evolve, to expand, and to live with depth and freedom.
Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to keep explaining yourself? Why you feel the way you feel? Why you said what you said? Why you chose your path instead of theirs? It becomes a performance, not for your growth, but for their comfort. And in that dance of explanation, you slowly abandon the most sacred thing you have, yourself. What if I told you the healing you seek doesn't begin when someone finally understands you? It begins when you stop needing them to. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to explain to be right. And you certainly don't need permission to choose yourself. In fact, that is where the transformation begins. Not in argument, not in persuasion, but in stillness, in the sacred decision to no longer perform. Silence, my friend, is not weakness. It's a declaration. It is the ultimate act of self-respect, because only in silence can you hear who you truly are. The noise, beyond the masks, beyond the expectations. People will question you. They'll label your silence as arrogance. They'll call your distance selfish. But what they cannot grasp is that your silence is not against them. It is for you. Healing doesn't look like shouting your truth until someone listens. It looks like whispering it gently to yourself and watching your soul finally breathe again. We've been taught to over-explain, to over-share, as if our worth depends on how well we can defend our existence. But the truth is, you were never meant to be a courtroom case. You are not a debate to be won. You are a soul to be known, first by you. And to truly know yourself, you must first silence the noise that keeps asking, do they understand me? Do they approve of me? Will they still love me if I choose myself? Let it go. You will find that once you stop explaining, the real healing begins. You will no longer spend your days fixing other people's misunderstanding. You will stop shrinking yourself to fit their boxes. And most beautifully, you will become at peace in your solitude, not lonely, but free. Walk away if you must. Be silent if you need. But whatever you do, choose yourself over and over again. Not because the world told you to, but because in the quiet space within you, you finally remembered you were always enough. When you feel the need to constantly explain yourself, you're unconsciously saying, my truth isn't enough unless you understand it. You turn your inner world into a courtroom, pleading your case, offering evidence, hoping for a verdict of acceptance. And while it might seem like communication or clarity, in reality it's a subtle form of self-abandonment. Every time you explain yourself to someone who isn't willing or capable of truly seeing you, you chip away at your own peace. We grow up believing that to be understood is to be safe. So we learn to over-explain, to justify our pain, our dreams, our silence, and even our joy. But what happens when you keep doing that? You start living from the outside in. Your words, actions, and choices are no longer for your growth, but to ensure someone else approves of your journey. This is where we lose ourselves in the desire to be accepted. You weren't born to convince anyone. You weren't born to be measured by their standards, their timelines, or their beliefs. When you explain yourself too often, especially to people who have already made up their minds, you give them the keys to your inner world, and with that power, they distort, misunderstand, or misuse what's sacred. The need to explain becomes a loop, a trap that keeps you tethered to opinions that never truly mattered. There is a quiet dignity in choosing not to explain, not because you are arrogant, but because you are grounded. When you begin to understand your own motives, your own healing, and your own path, you stop needing others to catch up. And ironically, the less you explain, the more powerful your presence becomes. People begin to feel your boundaries, not hear them. They begin to see that your silence isn't confusion, it's clarity. That your detachment isn't indifference, it's wisdom. Explaining yourself is often a way to seek control, to control how others see you, think about you, or respond to your choices. But that control is an illusion. No amount of explanation can convince someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. And no amount of words will ever satisfy someone who refuses to listen with an open heart. So why expend your energy trying? Your energy is sacred. Every word you speak is a withdrawal from your emotional bank. Choose where you spend it. Choose who deserves it. You owe no one a map of your soul unless they've earned the right to walk its terrain with care. Healing begins the moment you recognize that you don't need validation to be whole, that your decisions, your silence, and your distance can all be acts of deep self-love. The less you explain, the more you protect the parts of you still under construction, the wounds still healing, the dreams still blooming. Those things need stillness, not scrutiny. People will be uncomfortable when you stop explaining. They'll call you cold, distant, difficult. Let them. That discomfort belongs to them, not you. You are not responsible for their inability to understand your growth. You are responsible for honoring it. When you stop explaining yourself, you shift your life from external permission to internal alignment. You stop asking, will they get it? And start asking, do I get it? That is where power begins. Not in being understood, but in understanding yourself so deeply that you no longer seek translation. The next time you feel the urge to explain why you walked away, why you chose differently, or why you set that boundary, pause. Ask yourself, do I really need to say this? Or am I simply afraid of being misunderstood? You'll find that most of the time, your peace will thank you for choosing silence. And in that silence, you will find a deeper connection to yourself. You will feel the strength of your own presence, unshaken, unbothered, and unapologetically hope. Because the truth is, the moment you stop explaining yourself, you begin reclaiming yourself. Silence is often misunderstood. People see it as emptiness, as a void where something should be said, something should be done. But silence is not absence. It is presence. It is the presence of self, the presence of clarity, the presence of power. In a world that constantly demands your reaction, your explanation, and your noise, choosing silence becomes an act of rebellion, and not just rebellion, but healing. When you stop explaining yourself and fall into silence, something subtle but profound begins to unfold. At first it may feel like isolation. You'll sense the discomfort, both your own and others. They will wonder why you've gone quiet, why you're not defending yourself, justifying your choices, or participating in the usual performance. But in that silence, you'll start to hear something far more important than their voices. You'll hear your own. There's a soft whisper underneath all the noise, a voice you've ignored for years, the voice of your intuition, your truth, your inner being. The world's chatter drowned it out. The pressure to explain, to be understood, to make sense to others, turned the volume down on your soul. But silence, chosen and intentional, raises it again. You begin to realize that most of your suffering wasn't because people didn't understand you, but because you were too busy trying to make them. The mind calms in silence. The body relaxes. The heart slows down and begins to speak clearly. You start to notice patterns, the way you shrink yourself around certain people, the way you justify your pain to be more digestible to others, the way you doubt your worth when someone doesn't clap for your growth. These realizations don't come through more conversations or explanations. They come through stillness, through the sacred act of simply being with yourself. Silence is not passive, it is active, alive and transformative. It's not about muting your voice, it's about reconnecting it with its source. And when you reconnect with yourself through silence, you begin to align with truth. You see more clearly what serves you and what doesn't. You become more intentional with your words, your energy, your presence. You no longer speak to be heard, you speak to be real. And when you embrace silence, you also reclaim your boundaries. You no longer feel the urgency to react, defend, or fix. Not every insult requires a response. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every misunderstanding is yours to correct. Silence teaches you that you are allowed to walk away, not in anger, but in peace. You learn that your energy is not a public resource. It is sacred currency, and silence is how you protect it. In silence, healing begins, because the nervous system can finally rest. The part of you that was always bracing for judgment, criticism, or rejection can breathe. The emotional wounds that were constantly reopened by explaining yourself again and again finally start to close. The self-doubt that fed off external approval weakens. You stop living for applause and begin living in alignment. Silence also reveals who truly sees you. When you stop over-explaining, people show you who they are. Those who only valued you for your accessibility will drift away. Those who were only attached to the version of you they could control will lose interest. And those who genuinely respect your space, your boundaries, and your energy will remain. Silence clarifies relationships in a way words never can. This is the deep work. Choosing not to react, choosing not to explain, choosing not to please, sitting in the quiet discomfort of being misunderstood and still knowing your truth, not defending it. You realize the silence was never empty. It was always full. Full of the wisdom you forgot, the peace you lost, the strength you denied. It's in the silence where the real healing takes place. Not because you figured everything out, but because you stopped trying to convince the world and started listening to yourself, be silent, not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to no longer beg for understanding. Let that silence be your teacher. Let it be your protector. Let it be the space where you finally return home to yourself. Choosing yourself is often painted as selfish by those who benefit from you not doing so. But what they call selfish is, in truth, sacred. It is an act of reclaiming your time, your energy, your voice, and your presence. For too long, we've been taught that choosing others before ourselves is noble, that self-sacrifice is love, that overextending is strength. But no one tells you that pouring from an empty cup leaves you hollow, exhausted, and quietly resentful. There comes a moment. No one is going to give you back the years you gave away to please others. No one is going to apologize for the times they ask too much of you, and in that realization, you are offered a choice. Keep betraying yourself in the name of connection, or choose yourself and build a life that honors your soul. To choose yourself is to break a cycle. It's to finally say, I am enough. My needs matter. My peace matters. My dreams are valid, even if no one else understands them. It's not loud or dramatic. In fact, it's often a quiet internal shift, a decision to stop asking for permission to be who you are. And yes, when you begin to choose yourself, some people will get uncomfortable. They will notice the shift. They'll say you've changed. They'll accuse you of being distant, of not caring, of thinking only about yourself. But here's the truth. They were never uncomfortable with who you are. They were uncomfortable with the version of you that no longer bends to meet their demands. Choosing yourself is not about abandoning others. It's about refusing to abandon yourself. It's about setting boundaries, not as a wall, but as a doorway to inner peace. It's about listening to your body when it says, I'm tired. It's about listening to your heart when it whispers, this no longer feels right. It's about honoring your intuition, even when logic, tradition, or other people try to convince you otherwise. And when you finally choose yourself, something magical begins to happen. The world around you shifts. You stop chasing people who don't value you. You stop explaining your worth. You stop living in survival mode, constantly trying to earn love, approval, and attention. Instead, you become grounded. Your energy becomes magnetic, not because you're trying to be anything, but because you finally become you. It doesn't mean the journey becomes easy. In fact, choosing yourself will often lead you through loneliness, discomfort, and fear. There will be moments when you question your decision. You'll miss the comfort of old patterns, the familiarity of people who used to validate you. But with every step you take toward yourself, you'll grow stronger. You'll begin to trust your own voice again. You'll realize that self-abandonment is a greater cost than anyone's approval could ever be worth. When you choose yourself, you stop waiting for the right time, waiting for others to believe in you, waiting to be ready. You understand that your life is happening now, and no one can live it for you. You begin to show up for your own dreams, your own peace, and your own healing, not tomorrow, not someday, but today. Choosing yourself is the beginning of everything. It is the starting point of healing, of wholeness, of living a life that feels real. It's not about ego, it's about alignment. It's about saying, this is my path, and I no longer need anyone to walk it for me or with me unless they truly respect where I'm headed. And the beauty of this sacred choice is that once you choose yourself, you start attracting people who choose you too. Not out of need, but out of resonance. Not because you chased them, but because your authenticity called them in. Don't apologize for choosing yourself. Don't shrink. Don't second guess. Stand tall in your sacred decision. You've spent enough time explaining, pleasing, and performing. Now is the time to return to the only person who has been with you through it all. You. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone is meant to hold your truth, understand your pain, or witness your transformation. One of the most profound lessons in life is learning that just because someone is curious about you doesn't mean they're qualified to know you. And just because someone is present doesn't mean they are safe. Healing begins the moment you realize your story is sacred, and not everyone has earned the right to hear it. We often feel this pressure to be transparent with everyone, to explain why we set boundaries, why we walked away, why we changed. We overshare in an attempt to be understood. But in doing so, we hand out parts of ourselves to people who never had the capacity to protect them. Every time you let someone into your vulnerable space without discernment, you risk being misunderstood, misjudged, or even manipulated. Access to your inner world is a privilege, not a public service. Your energy, your time, your truth, and your emotional openness are sacred currencies, yet we give them away so easily, afraid that withholding means we're being distant or cold. But the opposite is true. Withholding is wisdom. Discernment is strength. You're not supposed to open every door just because someone knocks. You're not required to explain your past just because someone asks. There are people who will use your vulnerability against you. People who will twist your truth to make you doubt it. People who will pretend to listen only to later use your words to diminish your strength. You've likely met them. The ones who ask deeply personal questions only to judge your answers. The ones who press for details, not out of care, but out of control. The ones who pretend to support you, but secretly feed off your insecurity. This is why boundaries exist. Not to shut people out, but to protect what's still healing, still growing, still sacred. Without access to your wounds, just to make them feel closer to you. Real connection respects silence. Real love respects privacy. Real support doesn't require you to constantly unpack your pain to prove its existence. You are allowed to say, I'm not ready to share that. You are allowed to keep certain memories, dreams, and decisions private, but we let go. You are allowed to protect your peace without explanation. The people who truly care about you will never demand more than you are ready to give. They will meet you where you are, without pressure, without entitlement. Sometimes the greatest power lies in what you withhold, not as a weapon, but as a shield. Not as a way to push people away, but to make space for the right ones to come closer. Slowly, respectfully, and with reverence. When you become selective about who gets access to your mind and heart, you start to feel lighter, stronger, clearer, Your energy no longer leaks out to places it doesn't belong, and you begin to heal, not because you explained your pain to the right person, but because you stopped offering it to the wrong ones. There is something sacred about being deeply known by just a few, about having private joys, private griefs, private growth, that you don't perform for the world. In an age where oversharing is the norm, choosing privacy becomes an act of inner strength when you keep parts of yourself just for you. When you no longer feel obligated to narrate your every experience, you take back control. You stop giving people the blueprint to your peace. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them form opinions in rooms you'll never walk into. That's not your concern. What matters is your well-being, your peace, your alignment. What matters is that you feel safe in your own skin, even if no one else understands how you got there. The truth is, not everyone deserves access to every part of you. Not because you're cold, but because you're finally warm enough within yourself to no longer need outside validation. You are no longer in the business of convincing anyone of your worth. You are in the business of protecting what took you years to rebuild, and that is what freedom truly looks like. You will never find peace trying to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. It's one of the hardest truths to accept. Some people do not want clarity. They do not want reconciliation, truth, or even connection. They want control. They want the version of you that fits inside their limited perception. And the moment you step outside that frame, when you grow, heal, or simply choose differently, they feel threatened, not curious. You can exhaust yourself explaining your intentions, your feelings, your growth, and they still won't hear you, not because your voice isn't clear, but because their ears are closed. Their minds are already made up. Their ego needs you to be wrong. Their pride requires that they never admit they misunderstood you, and the more you try to correct that image, the more tangled you become in their projections. Healing begins when you stop arguing with their illusion of you, when you realize that you are not obligated to fix the version of yourself someone else created in their mind. That version isn't your responsibility. Their misunderstanding is not your burden. And no matter how perfectly you craft your words, you will never convince someone whose goal is not truth, but power. There is freedom in letting go of the need to be understood. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into your next season. Not everyone has the emotional maturity to hear your truth without twisting it. And not everyone wants to see you clearly, because clarity requires accountability. It forces them to confront how they treated you, how they judged you, how they refused to believe in your transformation. Let them misunderstand you. Let them write their own story about who they think you are. You do not have to show up in every chapter where your name appears. Your worth isn't diminished by their confusion. Your healing isn't delayed by their ignorance. Your growth is not dependent on their approval. This is what inner peace looks like, knowing who you are even when they don't, trusting your heart even when they question it, standing in your truth even when it's distorted by others. You don't need to shout louder. You need to walk away quieter. Your silence is not weakness. It's mastery. It's the understanding that explaining yourself to closed minds is a misuse of your sacred energy. You can forgive them without explaining your pain. You can move on without proving your point. You can rise without their applause. Peace comes not from being understood by others, but from deeply understanding yourself. It comes from knowing that your value is not up for negotiation, that your truth doesn't need to be dressed up for someone else's comfort. The people who are meant for you won't need a 3-hour explanation to get your heart. They will feel your sincerity. They will sense your growth. They will honor your path, even if they don't fully understand it. That's love. That's respect. And anything less is not worth chasing. You've spent too much of your life explaining yourself to people who weren't listening. It's time to conserve your breath for things that give you life. Time to speak only when your soul is at peace, not when your ego feels attacked. Time to let your silence do the talking, not in anger, but in wisdom. Because real healing doesn't require the world to understand you. It only requires you to understand you. To trust the path that brought you here. To honor the growth that others can't see. To choose peace, even if it means being misunderstood forever by those who refuse to look deeper. Let them misunderstand you. Let them carry their version of the story. You've got a life to live, a real one, a free one that no longer depends on the fragile understanding of people who never really saw you in the first place. And that life, it begins the moment you stop explaining and start living. Healing is not always loud, it's not always visible, and it certainly doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes healing is simply the quiet decision to stop reacting, to stop pouring your soul into spaces that cannot hold it. It begins when you stop needing to correct the narrative others have created about you. It begins when you realize that your peace is more important than being understood. The world teaches us to be reactive, to defend, to justify, to argue, to prove. But healing asks something entirely different. It asks you to unlearn that reflex. It invites you to respond not with more noise, but with more stillness. It teaches you that not every situation deserves your engagement. Not every wound needs to be reopened just to prove it bled. Sometimes walking away silently is the loudest thing you can do. There is a deep kind of power that awakens in you when you learn to observe without responding, to witness chaos without becoming part of it, to feel triggered and still choose peace. That doesn't mean you're numb. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're evolving. It means the old version of you, the one who felt the need to explain, to fix, to be liked, is finally being laid to rest. And in that silence, something profound begins to bloom. You start hearing yourself, not the noise of anxiety, not the fear of judgment, not the internalized voices of everyone who ever doubted you, but you. You hear your needs more clearly. You understand your patterns more compassionately. You recognize your worth more deeply. You begin to see that your peace was never in their hands. It was always within you. It was just buried under layers of reaction, under years of trying to be enough for others, under the constant pressure to be palatable, agreeable, explainable. Healing asks you to shed all that, to return to your essence, to no longer require a witness for your transformation to be valid. When you stop reacting, people will notice. Some will call it cold. Others will say you've changed. And they're right. You have. You've shifted from performing to protecting, from seeking to knowing, from noise to stillness. You no longer respond to provoke change in others. You respond, or don't, to preserve change in yourself. This is the kind of healing that's not visible on the surface. There are no big announcements, no declarations, no public closes, just small, quiet decisions to let go instead of holding on, to stay quiet instead of arguing, to choose solitude instead of chasing connection that drains you, to remain rooted in your truth even when it's questioned, doubted, or ignored. You'll realize you don't need closure from every wound. You don't need validation for every choice. You don't need to be understood by everyone who misunderstands you. What you need is peace. And peace isn't earned through confrontation. It's created through boundaries, silence, and deep inner trust. You stop explaining because your life is no longer a courtroom. You don't owe a defense. You are not on trial. You are allowed to grow in directions that make others uncomfortable. You are allowed to walk away without giving a speech. You are allowed to choose. That's what real healing feels like. It's not about revenge. It's not about being proven right. It's about being free. Free from the compulsion to be liked. Free from the addiction to external validation. Free from the patterns that kept you trapped in cycles of over-explaining and undervaluing yourself. Stop reacting. Stop explaining. Let silence become your sanctuary. Let your calm speak louder than your defense. Let your boundaries do the work of protection. And let your growth be a private garden, not a public performance. In that stillness, in that sacred quiet, you will find something rare. Yourself, whole, rested, enough. You will realize that the greatest healing happens not when others understand you, but when you finally stop needing them to. The conclusion of this speech is a quiet return to the self, a recognition that peace, healing, and personal power are not found in the noise of validation, reaction, or explanation, but in the stillness of choosing yourself without apology. When you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim energy once spent trying to be understood by those unwilling to listen. When you choose silence, you step out of the exhausting loop of proving your worth and into the calm clarity of knowing it. When you finally choose yourself, not out of ego, but out of self-respect, the world no longer has the power to define you. Not everyone will understand your silence. Not everyone will applaud your decision to walk away, to set boundaries, or to evolve quietly. But they don't have to. Because healing is not a performance. It is an act of inner rebellion, of sacred solitude, of deep remembering. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be true to yourself. So stop explaining. Be silent, choose yourself, and in that choice you'll find everything you've been looking for.